Well, another vlog on this whole Variax thing. Some interesting stuff. So not really particularly having to do with Variax, but a lot to do with an update that I was doing yesterday to these two Bridge 6s. These are tied together, and the last update that they came out with has this setlist manager stuff. So I thought it might be an idea to actually show a problem that I found yesterday in how I was setting these things up, which was interesting. Now, this thing over here, I had that running, and I believe this guy was asking me the other day about dual direction TRS MIDI, which is something that the Strymon stuff does in particular. It's very not normal, but they use the tip and then the ring to send things in two directions. So with one of these going into their hub, typically, you're able to spin these and send MIDI out, and you're able to send MIDI in on the ring, or vice versa. It doesn't matter, but the point is there's two ways. Now, I sat here this morning faffing around with this thing and nothing was working, and I was pulling my hair out for a while, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute. This is probably that famous year-long cable that has a little resistor built in there, which makes it possible for the Strymon to work. So whoever that guy was who was asking, I think I found it, and I will get back to you on that, but on with the show. To fix this thing, what I ended up doing to try it out was I tried plugging in this WIDI Uhost, which is something I've always thought about doing but never gotten around to it. That's taking power off the computer right now, USB power in, and then this is dual way MIDI over USB. So that is going into this far bridge. And then these flexiports, I'm pretty sure this has been mentioned a billion times, but it's always good to see them in action. These also do two-way MIDI, and Pirate MIDI guys have been very good about setting this up. This is one of the key reasons for me getting this over all the other controllers I have. I have about 8 or 9, but that was a big thing. So the way I set this thing up was, they've all been updated now. That's going to be powered by battery on the back here. Let's see how that comes up. Come on, thing. Yeah. So I've got a FlexiPort going out to Flexi 1 to Flexi 2. Flexi 1 to Flexi 2. All the way down the board, these things are ribbed together kind of like the spokes of a wheel, and now it's going out here, and you can set up in the editors on these things. You can do 2 on a screen, no problem. That's all going out here into the iPad. The iPad is then mapping this stuff out to the Variax to change. So I was messing with it, and boom, there you go. Changing stuff here now from the screen. So that's kind of working. There's all this remoting stuff. It's pretty cool. Now the other thing I was thinking about, and a lot of this is kind of Helix inspired. On the big Helix, you can go on your displays, if you set it up in your global settings, you can jump between the preset mode and stomp mode. You can also change the left-hand side to be banks or snapshots or presets, whatever you want, and bounce around between them. So this thing, what I was trying to do here is set these up that when you hold it in, that's activating the bank. And this thing is now stepping through 5 different PC messages. I don't see them, but if you're like that, you can see it. Here we're in bright daylight, and I haven't really changed it, but. So that's a bank of 5 in a sequential set. So say that were a bank 30 that's going 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and then wrapping back around to 30 again, which is cool. There's a setting that you have in the Pirate MIDIs where you could set the secondary function. If you hold that in, that other one lights up. and then and only then will it send it. So if you think about these things when you're coming up with your MIDI stuff, I mean, the PCs, CCs, all that stuff is pretty simple. But where it gets interesting is what I would like to say the poker game of it. This thing is a poker face preset that kind of gave me the idea of cards. Imagine with these, if you're doing a set list, you have a number of presets in a determined order, which you've pre-programmed. You can change the order of that on a computer, no problem. But when you're out live, it makes life simple. It's kind of like having 5, 6 cards in a row, and you're just blindly putting them down one after the other, and you know the order is going to be cool. No problem with that. The other way, typically, that someone will be messing with a MIDI controller, if you're not using it for live stuff in a set fashion, you might be using these things to compose, which is what I'm doing most of the time, making your own music. And that's another really interesting use case, because say you were on a Helix or something like that, and you have all of your presets grouped in different sets. If you were playing poker and you had a hand, 5 cards in your hand, you'd have the ability to go and look through and decide up front and then take that card and put it down. That's kind of the same thing that you're doing here with these different guitar presets. You've got all 5 of them presented. It's sort of the same thing on a Helix. You can switch to preset mode. You can go up and down through your banks of presets, look at them 10 at a time, 8 at a time, make the selection. Here, you're doing that same sort of thing, but all in one switch, which is really groovy when you think about it. So it could be there. That's switching them live, and you're gonna get an interruption in sound every time, a brood, 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 as it's reloading the guitar. Turn it off. You can browse through 5, then hold it in and fire it. Boom. You've made a selection for the poker middle one, in the middle here, and off it goes. Now, I've still got to test that, but I thought for guys who are making videos on this stuff, like Scott Uhl or Steve Sterlacci, or maybe even John Cordy, if he ever gets his finger out and does some MIDI stuff, these are interesting arguments. See that there, firing? Boom, boom, boom. So that's all working. This is where your whole MIDI mad scientist thing takes off. It's figuring out how can you best communicate these things. I think a game of cards, a game of poker, something like that, is a really good sign for it. It's how do you want to deal these cards out? Or how can you do this without having to manually go through the presets, which, when you're composing is a real pain. You should be there playing, and at the same time, you can look at what's coming next. You can limit it to just 5 presets instead of having to go through all 127. You don't have to constantly reorder things on a Helix. You can use HX commands, HX preset commands, and set up runs, which I've always called rabbit runs, where one preset leads to the next preset, leads to the next preset, and they can be completely out of order. So we'll see how that goes, but just to give you an idea, Cat Go here, you've got 3 banks of 10 for a total of 30 presets in this thing. And the only way to do it on such a small little system like this was up and down, and then change banks. And the way Boss configured this in their app, they gave you 2 or 3 different ways to do it, but it was always blocked in with this. Change to the bank you want and go and find the preset, and you're reloading sounds every time. The whole point with MIDI Patch, which Stefan hooked up, was to give you the ability to actually display all of this stuff in one place. Could be a physical thing, or it could be like here, Joe's Patches. Boom, commando. And this gives you a table of 3 times 10 for the same 30, and you can literally bang away on these little icons, and this thing jumps around if it's connected directly from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. You know, that idea brought in an app which really, really works, which is really cool, but it's the same problem that people face all the time. It's like, what's the best way to ring these things in? Now, back in the day, you would literally have to go next preset, next preset, next preset, next preset if you were on a Helix. These things changed the game with that. You could use a PC scroll, which would let you go from, say, preset 1 to 5, and then it would wrap around, same as it's doing here. You'd need 2 switches to do that. 1 for up, 1 for down. And that would be cool. And by ring fencing, I mean, say you're at a wedding and you're doing an acoustic set, and you definitely do not want your Guns N' Roses patch coming up in the middle of the bride walking down the line. That sort of idea of a PC scroll would delineate acoustic from heavy metal and would save your bacon. So it's a real world super application. This other idea of being able to jump from preset to preset directly is something that comes up all the time. And these things, with this sequential messaging, will let you do that. Even before you came up with setlist managers, there you can say, okay, these are the 5 presets that I'm most likely going to want to jump to. And that lets you preview them and send. Potent stuff. That, if you applied to a plethora as well, would be really wicked. You know, this is like having all of your snapshots on one thing. And the Helix, you can do that, but you are stepping through snapshots. There's an HX command called HX snapshots, and one of them is preset next, which will jump there. That concatenates all that stuff into one switch. So imagine the power that these things give you. It's also a bit of a pain to think about it, but just think of a deck of cards. You playing poker, you shuffling cards, or you playing a game. The rules change. Stuff like this can adapt to those rules and make things happen, which is really cool. I thought that was worth sharing a bit. And wickedly enough, that, like snapshots with these smart group messages, shows you where you are, and they're connected across these two. That would be Flexi 2 going to Flexi 1. Me changing presets on here, if I hold those in, both of them jump. They are 2 separate things, but they're connected intelligently, which is something extremely new. So props to Sam and Simon and all of the crew who did all of the heavy work in getting this thing going. That is really cool. You're changing banks. You know what bank you're in. You only have those 5 things. And there's maybe something I would like to see in the commands that control this is a command to be able to jump, like a CC that will let you jump to a specific step in the sequence. That would be cool. I'm not sure if that's there or not. I'm still digesting all the manuals for this, but I think that would be really cool. You should be able to send a CC, I don't know, 27 or whatever, if it's free, for that switch, and say jump to step 0, you know, jump back to step 1, or jump to step 5, or jump directly remotely. That would be wicked. But yeah, this is working. I can set this up in OnSong with multiple messages, and it will turn that off, jump through those selections, turn it on, and hopefully send just that. I've got to check that out. But anyway, that's how this whole thing is progressing. And really think about that, not in terms of variacs, think about that in terms of all PC commands. If you can view stuff in advance and then send the last thing that you've selected by hitting another button in like that, just off one switch, that is a major, major, major savings in space and complications and simple. Wicked stuff.